You got to be tenacious. You got to be persistent. If you're not, then you're just going to hit a brick wall and you're just going to go get a normal job.
So, would you like to start by introducing yourself and telling me a bit about what you do?
Okay. My name's Scott Freeman, and I'm a musician. I'm a singer-songwriter. I guess you'd class me as kind of indie punk in the vein of the early Cure, I guess. And yes, I travel around the country playing gigs, and writing songs and playing them to people. And I mostly do that as a solo act. It's mostly my voice and my guitar, and it's kind of a different kind of performance, because usually with an acoustic act they're very still and usually rather lovely and soft, and instead I'm sort of running around the crowd and jumping on furniture and screaming in people's faces. So it's always a really lively show, as doing my solo stuff. And occasionally I play with my backing band, the Tokyo Sex Whales, and yeah, they'll join me for a few shows. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And can you tell us a bit more further about kind of the experience of before COVID and playing live music and what that kind of feels like?
Okay, so I've been playing live music, what, like 17 years now, and pretty much kind of like every month for the last 17 years. It's when I first stepped on stage, it was kind of like it was just felt more natural than real life. It was a very strange experience, and I just kept pursuing that and playing as much as possible. And moving into my 20s, I started doing it professionally. I started doing music full time, and yeah, so I, before COVID, would be going out and gigging several times a week, sometimes all week if I was kind of out on the road. I've booked a few kind of tours around, that I've done. I've gone all up and down England. Name a city, I've probably played there. I've played a lot of obscure towns and villages in between as well. Played a bit in Scotland. We played the Edinburgh Fringe. Played Wales. Haven't done Northern Ireland yet, so I can't say I've played the entirety of the UK, but we'll get there. But yeah, so yeah, I will gig as much as possible. Because yeah, I love it, but it's part of my income. So if I don't gig, I don't eat. And yeah, through gigging, you can sell merch as well, and you get performance royalties and things like that. So yeah, in playing gigs, that's how I get by, and I love it as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Looking at your YouTube channel, I noticed the video before lockdown from one of your Koala Tea Time podcasts, and you explained what you predict that would happen when COVID hit and how it would affect the music industry. Could you kind of summarize what you were saying in that video?
Yes, so yes, as you're saying, before lockdown happened, I was doing my podcast Quality Time, and in the podcast I was kind of talking about COVID-19, because I think that podcast that you mentioned, that was kind of early to mid March, so it was like a week or so before we went into lockdown, and it felt like it was getting more serious. Yet there was still a lot of people that weren't taking it seriously. So I was kind of just speculating, thinking, what will this look like? And I thought, well, all the music venues are going to shut down, because you got a virus, airborne virus out there. People aren't going to be, in small tight spaces together, and that's exactly what happened. Um, Unfortunately, that's kind of what happened. And venues did get to open up for a little while in the summer and early autumn, but now all shut again. So yeah, no, it was just, unfortunately, I guessed right in that podcast. I wish I'd been wrong, and that music venues were able to stay open, because the last 8 months or so would probably have been a lot more fun.
How has COVID affected your personal music consumption? So, do you find yourself listening to more music since you're stuck at home all the time, or has the lack of gigs and festivals kind of reduced your consumption?
So a lot of the new music that I consume usually is when I'm at gigs and, the support acts or the headliners and getting to listen to them. And, so I'm always hearing brand new live music all the time. And so it's been a shame to miss out on that because, yeah, some of my favorite bands have been bands I've played gigs with, and then I just keep continuing to follow them online or going to their shows. So I've missed that element. Um, but I have been listening to a bit more new music very recently. A friend of mine turned me onto the Tiny Desk concerts, and I'd known about them, but I'd never clicked on one of the videos, and so it showed me a whole bunch of new bands. One of these bands was called Moon Hooch, which is kind of a weird jazz meets dubstep trio, which is just bizarre. And one of the saxophone players had a massive traffic cone coming out of his saxophone, and it was crazy. And that's probably like the best new band I've discovered. So yeah, but throughout lockdown I've been listening to a lot of nostalgic tracks, harking back to a simpler time. But more recently I've been digging into new stuff, which is just so much fun. There's just nothing like finding new music that just blows your mind. So yeah.
And looking at some of the solutions to social distancing, we've seen the rise of like virtual gigs. Could you elaborate on your thoughts on that, like how they've come about and what you think of their success, really?
Okay, well, I mean, I've taken part in a few virtual gigs. I've done more live streams myself, and they're kind of fun in that you get to kind of interact to people and respond to comments live on the screen, and yeah, and so there's a certain charm to it, but it just doesn't replace the live experience. The other day I was watching one of the Foo Fighters live shows that they were live streaming, I think at the Roxy in Los Angeles, and just you could just tell like they were just really awkward and not getting the full experience of playing a show out, even though they probably had thousands of people around the world watching that stream. And you feel it because, yeah, when you don't have the energy in the room, you don't have anyone to bounce off of. You don't know whether your songs are going well unless someone can shout at you on a message board or something. But it's just not the same. So I think it's worth doing. It's worth musicians trying it out. Some people might really love it, and I've no doubt that after COVID, hopefully COVID goes away, that virtual gigs will continue. That there will be bands that might even primarily just do virtual gigs. That might be how some acts have started out. They might have never played an actual live show before, but they do a virtual gig and they really get into it. So yeah, I think virtual gigs are here to stay, but the volume of them at the moment I think will eventually go away because they just lack that live human interaction element,
And looking through some of like the live gigs available, virtual gigs available, some of the ones artists like Jess Glynn and Anne Marie, some of the bigger names, are still doing asking for a full price of like a regular concert for their
Yes,
virtual
yeah.
gigs. Do you think that's justified for the experience you get?
No, no, I really don't. No, because yeah, when you're paying 50, 60 pounds or whatever it is to go see a band, you're paying for the music, yeah, but you're paying for the experience more so, and sitting in a room staring at a screen, watching someone play live across the world, you're so divorced from that actual experience, that I don't think it's worth it. Artists got to earn a living at the end of the day, so I get why they're charging, but I would feel incredibly false doing it myself. I've put out PayPal tip jars when I've done live streams. I haven't had anyone put anything in, but it's there, you know. Um, but yeah, charging all that much money, I mean, nah, it doesn't sit well with me.
So I'm just kind of curious then. Obviously, you talked about touring and stuff and how you're making money from that and royalties
Yeah.
and stuff. So COVID's affecting you without making money from virtual gigs. How have you coped kind of with that lack of?
I'm fortunate in that I have a very small part-time music job as well, in that I teach music a day and a half a week um, in a prison, and I've not been doing that since mid-March, but I've been on furlough, so that's kept me going and has allowed me to just continue building up things that will hopefully eventually start making more money. So because I've had that little bit of money tiding me over, it means I've been able to get more stuff recorded ready for a new release next year that I can hopefully tour and make money from. And, you know, been writing a musical that hoping to get made into a film again, you know, and then also just building up my YouTube channel to the point of it's near. I'm going to be able to monetize it soon, which I've been working on for 2 solid years. So finally, that's kind of paying off. And also, I've built a recording studio here. I don't know if you can see much of it, but I started building a studio in November last year, and we got it finished in time for COVID. And I've just been building up my skill set throughout lockdown. And the whole idea of this place was to be able to open it to the public as another source of income, because that's the thing of being a full-time musician. Sometimes gigs get cancelled, you know, like really lucrative good gigs, and so you have to have other things you can fall on. You can't just rely on that one thing, and so I'm really thankful and really blessed that yeah, I had my job to fall back on in this time, because if I was just going out and making money from gigs alone, that would have been really difficult. So yeah, always got to have lots of multiple streams of income as an artist, you know. But it sucks because you get paid for the gigs, you get paid for the merch you sell, but more so you get paid for the performance royalties. At the end of the day, you get paid through PRS, and my last royalty check, which was for earlier in the year where I played one gig, was just like £20, and it's usually in the hundreds. So that was a huge bummer. But yeah, you keep trucking, you know.
Okay, I'd like to have a closer look to kind of your career and your history of getting into music. So, can I ask you, first of all, why you chose a career in the music industry?
Yeah, so when I was 9 years old, I was shown the film Wayne's World. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's a scene early on where Mike Myers' character and his friends are in a car and they're driving to a gig, and they put on a tape of Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, and hearing that song and seeing them just drive along in the car singing along to it, something exploded in my brain, like a light went on, and I just, you know, the film ended and I turned to my mum and I said, I'm gonna write songs and play them to people. That's what I'm gonna do. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Literally nearly 20 years later, it'll be 20 years next year. And yeah, I just kept doing it because just something about writing songs just accesses something in me. I can express things that I can't otherwise, and then performing them to people. Like, as someone who's a bit more shy and introverted, when I'm on stage, like, I'm not. You know, I don't know what happens in that moment, but when I'm on stage, it's just I love performing, I love entertaining, I love getting a crowd going, and just being able to do those two things in tandem, to, you know, explore myself through songwriting, but then, you know, exploring that kind of big social interaction that a gig is, you know. I've just kept pursuing that year after year after year, and it hasn't been easy, really. It hasn't, you know. Money wise, you know, in my 20s, it hasn't been easy to make money out of music. But, you know, as I said earlier, you know, it's been about pushing multiple different sources of income, making sure I get all the royalties I can get, make sure I've got the best merch I can sell, you know, trying to monetize YouTube, doing all these things. I wanted to, yeah, I want to do music so badly that I've got to find all the different ways to fund the mission, you know, because at the end of the day, making money, that's kind of a side thing. That's there to pay my bills and make sure I can eat. Really, what matters to me in life is the show and the songs. That's the thing I pursue, you know. So I'm on a big artistic crusade.
And are there any skills that you've picked up over the years that have helped you develop and grow as a musician?
Yeah, I think a lot of it you kind of intuit along the way. I started a new podcast called the Weekend Rock Stars with my friend Billy, who's also a musician, who's toured Europe and things. And so, in terms of skills that I've developed over the years, in the podcast we talk a lot about the things that no one really teaches you as a musician. No one really, teaches you how to book shows. No one teaches you how to be in a band. You just get in a band and you feel your way through it. But there's a sort of there's what's the word I'm looking for? Non-verbal communication, in a band, that's such a big thing. And I think that ends up benefiting you in other areas in life, because in a band you have to get tight and you have to be able to indicate major musical shifts, or where you're going to go with a nod or a wink or a look, or a quick jab of the elbow or whatever. There's so many little things that happen in those small moments that I think just teaches you about some of the subtleties and the nuance of life. And I think actually the thing I've really learned in the last few years is about working with the right people, because I've worked with some of the wrong people, and it just makes life more difficult. You got to make sure that people are behind you, but they're also, not everyone's right for each other. You got to find people that you gel with musically, personally. And I've kind of developed a system. It's based off. It's actually, I'm a big comic book fan, so one of the comic books I love is called Watchmen, and the artist on it, he was giving an interview, and he says, in the comics industry, there's three values they look for. They look for, are you really good? Are you nice? And are you reliable? Those three qualities. And I've kind of adapted that into my process for choosing people I want to work with. And he said that if you can find someone with two of those qualities, you're golden. He says, if you can find all three, even better. But for the most part, you're going to land on someone who's got two. And yeah, that's it. It's when I meet someone and jam with them and get to know them, it's trying to perceive, like, which of the three do they have? Is this going to be someone I can get along with in a tour van for 2 weeks, and put up with? Is this someone who's going to be really good and bring something special to the band? And if they don't have, one of those two things, are they reliable? Are they going to show up on time? These are really important values. So I think it's all the musical stuff comes and goes. I've grown as a songwriter by writing more songs. I've grown as a guitarist by playing guitar more. But I think actually in the music industry and interacting with people, like, this is the stuff that really matters, the interpersonal personal stuff, for talking to prospective band members, but also when you're talking to someone on the phone and trying to, score a certain amount for a gig, and knowing what kind of person you're getting into business with, so yeah.
And what are the positives and negatives of having a career in the music industry?
Okay, so I mean, the positives are, I mean, it depends what you're doing exactly in the music industry. If it's, a creative job like I'm doing, I get to spend a lot of time making cool stuff, and making art that I really like, that, is really soothing for my soul and really excites me intellectually and creatively, and it's probably really good for my mental health, but I don't really think about it on those terms. I just guess it is, you know. So so yeah, that's one of the positives. Again, another positive is you get to meet lots of cool people. I think people that work in music do it because they really love it, and the music venues I play the most are venues where I've really got to know the people that run the places, and so when I go to play those places, I'm excited not only to play but to get to hang out with those people, and because the culture of that venue would be really cool. And you can play a lot of venues where you just show up and you don't know who runs the venue, what's going on. You just jump on stage, and the sound man barks orders at you. There's a lot of shows like that. Yeah, I mean, yeah. as I said, the creative stuff that you get to do, that's the big highlight for me. The negatives are, I mean, if you don't have a full-time job and you're trying to make it your thing and you're starting from scratch, it's going to be difficult. You've got to limit your expenses, the things you can do. I mean, I've been on one proper holiday in my 20s, and I have so many friends that went and traveled the world and went and did things, and instead I was traveling around this country, which is nice, but it's not Australia. uh, so yeah, it limits some opportunities you can do. You've really got to do it if you love it. If you don't like really love it and really just have a huge passion for it, it's not worth it. I try to dissuade people from going into it, because there's a lot of heartbreak that goes along with it. You can play some gigs where people are really cruel. I've had gigs almost like the one in Blues Brothers. Have you seen Blues Brothers? Yeah, you know the chicken wire scene
Hmm.
where everyone's chucking stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I've had people throw stuff, except there wasn't chicken wire, so that hurt. And so you've got gigs like that. Um, you could be halfway through a set and then the manager pulls you out back and goes, "I don't like you, get out of here," and they throw you out with your instruments out the back door and only pay you half. And a lot of people don't treat musicians and a lot of artists with respect. Like, you wouldn't treat a plumber like that, but it's okay to treat a musician like that. It's just rubbish. So there's a lot of bad people out there that take advantage of musicians, and yeah, as you go along, you as I said, you learn to do your research on a place more so you can avoid those places, and you end up finding your niche in the place that you play well, and you end up playing those more. So those are the positives. The positive is you can find a really cool community to be a part of as a musician. Negatives are, like in any industry, there are bad people, and you got to be really careful what contracts you sign. I've been offered management contracts over the years with some absolute hucksters, and it's just, yeah, you got to make sure you don't accidentally sign your life away because you get excited that someone shows you a shiny contract. So yeah, man.
And aside from obviously bad experiences you might have had with venues, there must be good experiences where you've had like a lot of audience interaction, and you've kind of had maybe perhaps a sense of euphoria and kind of this real joy. Does
I
that kind
definitely.
of gratification act as a motivation to continue doing what you do?
Yes, it definitely does. So traveling around venues, meeting lots of people at venues. Um, yeah, I've met so many cool people, and I made some fans, kind of earlier in my 20s, that are still following me around to gigs today, which is really cool. And they know all the words to the songs that I've written, which just blows my mind that I sat in a dark room and wrote some words on a piece of paper and then sang them, and they like register with another human being. That's just crazy. And I've had that interaction all over the country. I've had huge rooms of people singing along on some of my songs, um, who've never heard these songs before. They're hearing them in the moment, and that's the best feeling. It's just, yeah, it's great. And especially when I go back to certain venues and I know I'll see certain people there, it's just it's so cool. It's so cool that even at kind of my level, that I guess I kind of have fans. So yeah, man, it's the best feeling. It really is. It makes all the bad stuff just fade away really quickly.
And finally, do you have any advice for someone trying to break out into a creative industry like this?
Don't do it. No, no, no. If, as I said, if you're really passionate about your art, then you should. You really should. You should pursue it. You should charge, full force into it and give it everything you have. You just got to be you got to be pragmatic about it. You got to be really practical and be like, right, well, I want to pursue my passion, but like, how do I actually make money off of this? When I jumped into it, I was not making a lot of money off of it for a while, and I was really hungry. I had to sell a lot of gear to pay rent, to pay my car insurance. I had to borrow money. It was just an awkward, just icky kind of time. It's never nice when you don't have a lot of money, and like there's a lot of stress that can come along with that. So if you can sort the money thing out, like that's like baseline, sort that out, be able to feed yourself, put a roof over your head somehow, and have a little bit of money left over for Netflix. If you can do that, then boom, you can really start doing it. I'm kind of at that level now where I'm kind of stable, making enough money off of it. And that is super important. But as I said, like the thing that keeps you going is the passion. I've had several friends who were really passionate about it and kind of blew up and then kind of just faded down. They just couldn't take the constant grind, because that's what it is. It's a grind. It sounds nasty, but you got to just keep going with it. And there's going to be a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And sometimes you get into a season, like you could have a couple months where you haven't played a single good gig, and you just feel awful. You're like, why am I doing this? I'm getting up and bearing my soul in front of people, and they're not. No one's responding the way I want to. But then that can quickly change. Good gigs will come back around as well. But yeah, it's there's a lot of highs and there's a lot of lows, like in anything. But being a musician, there's a certain level of sensitivity that comes into that, and a certain level of taking things. You can take things really personally. If people really don't like a show or something, or say something mean to you afterwards or during, or throw things at you. These are just the realities. We come from a tradition of bards and court jesters who historically were not treated well, and we are treated a lot better than those in kind of those times. But it's still a lot of people don't take you seriously. So go for it if you really want to do it, but just know that the path it is filled with hardships, and you got to be able to take the knocks. You got to be tenacious. You got to be persistent. If you're not, then you're just going to hit a brick wall and you're just going to go get a normal job. You got to be able to have the grit. And some of that comes from just your constitution as a person. And then some of that will come with experience and going through it and growing as a person. So, yeah, hopefully that's answered your question.
Yeah, thank you so much.